I'm Jono Meigs, director of the Trevor Zoo, graduated the class of 65, and been back working at the zoo since 1972.
Hi, I'm Abigail McEnroe, and I'm Janet and Frankie's daughter. I used to be at the zoo a long, long time ago when I was a child with my brother Michael and my other brother, older brother Don.
All right, who do we have here?
This looks like brother Mike, my middle brother with Saber, that I think belonged to Hubert Will, and it probably was in the 60s. And that's Timber, a timber wolf that was brought to our house on Christmas Eve and deposited, and we put her in the bathroom and left a note for my parents. They'd been out that evening. And we said, don't go in the bathroom, there's a timber wolf. Now, she came in and she had been caught by a snare trap. She was very thin and had a lot of diarrhea, but my mother was used to living in her bathroom, and our whole downstairs was pretty much an infirmary for whatever was dumped on our door, whatever day or night.
This cage, actually, we modified later to make a badger cage before we finally took it down. And I'll tell you, this thing was well built. It took us hours with a sledgehammer to try to remove this thing.
Well, I think that wolf later, Don Kerr took care of. And I was heartbroken because I was very disappointed that it was going back to the zoo and not staying with me. But I think he went on later to work with wolves, didn't he?
Yeah, I think that's right.
She certainly looks beautiful there compared to what she looked like when she first came.
Now, did some of these animals spend time in your house?
Almost anything that was injured would spend time in our house. We were the infirmary. And then they would move up to the zoo when they were healthier. And here's Daddy with a coati, and I'm assuming that's got to be late 30s, early 40s, because it looks like it's over at their little yellow house on the way to Smithfield where they used to live. And they didn't live in campus at that point.
Ah, the cod liver oil.
Those noses could get in a lot of trouble. I think different. I remember one time it got its paw in a wrong cage, and Dr. Lukens had to amputate, and that was my first situation of watching a vet do an operation. But it came out very well, and she lived to be a ripe old age.
So this is Bill Woodcock, is that right?
I'm not sure who it is. At this point, I would be so young I wouldn't know.
Oh, so here's the cod liver oil. This is definitely a photo op. Nothing particularly interesting about that tree except that it's got cod liver oil all over it.
Now, I'm assuming back then something like that would have been relatively rare at the zoo. Remember, we never got to choose our animals. It was only what arrived at our door. And something even like the kinkajou here would have been something special at that point.
Now, I remember your mom, I think, told me this was Demon.
I, at this point, was probably in three-cornered pants. If even around. I do note how nice the flowers look when the zoo was first built. And how they love their bananas.
Well, the flowers, that would have been your mom's influence, yeah?
Yeah, later the greenhouse, but I saw in one of these shots earlier that there were some roses. Certainly that looks like fall and some mums, so. And the zoo's looking pretty spiffy at that point. Give it another 40 years and a lot of pee and poop, and it gets pretty iffy.
This is the front step of the old zoo, I think.
Yeah.
It's actually a great shot of an animal eating upside down.
He loved to show off what they could do with their tails.
You try standing on your head and eating, it doesn't go so well.
Now, this is my mother with Lucifer, and Lucille. There were three little raccoons. We actually got them just as their eyes opened. And they were just three that really clicked, and they went all over the place. They went to kindergarten. They went to the central schools all over and showed them off. And later that summer, they went to the island with us, and you saw three little kids with three little raccoons heading off to the beach, and we got them down to the tide pools. And they're fascinated because if they found a little starfish or anything, they'd pat it on their stomach. And then they were really happy. They had to wash everything, of course. And they spent the summer getting out of their cage and climbing trees, and we got tired of climbing spruce trees looking for them. So if they got out of their cage, we'd just leave their food there, and they'd come back in a couple day or two. But they later went on to, at least Lucinda anyway, went to the Gary Moore show in New York and also the Arthur Godfrey show. But sadly enough, she was never the same after that show. She got kind of grumpy, and as they got older, they got more aggressive. But they were a lot of fun for quite a few years and did a lot of PR for the zoo. I don't know, do you remember the invention of all the animal feeds? Remember we had dry dog food we fed a lot of stuff to, and Wonderful Hills horse meat, and then the addition of vitamins. But the best one was the introduction of monkey chow that Dad served to most of quite a few Millbrook elite one night at a dinner party when he discovered monkey chow in a dip. Then he told him halfway through the evening.
So I think this is a ring-tailed cat, is that right?
Well, I hate to say I've kind of forgotten.
Now here's Mike with an opossum, yeah?
Yeah. And Goldie, the Cocker Spaniel, there was in the background. And that was another situation. The mother was hit on the road, and we put it in a quiet cage for the night to see what we could do for her. At that point, not much. And we opened the box in the morning, and she had passed away, but we didn't know that she had a whole bunch of these guys in her little pouch. Now, this was taken, their eyes were just opening when we got them, so these pictures were taken a little bit later. But they were just so much fun to have. And again, we went to all the local schools again. Whatever school we were in, they went to. But these little guys, you could snap them on your arm. The way they carry on their mom, snapping on the fur, you could snap them on your arm and line them right up. But an eyedropper was a good way to feed them. And a lot of hours. We'd take shifts. And they live at our house. Generally on top of the washer and dryer.
Well, of course, we're still doing lots of rehab at the zoo. But probably the biggest difference is that most of the animals don't travel home anymore.
Yeah, that's probably good. We didn't have any china or lampshades left.
Although, actually, some of the little guys, we have some squirrels and possums. Usually those first days, they're going home with someone at night. So from viewing the film with your mom in the early 70s, she tells me this is Reddy, who was housebroken. Now, does that mean housebroken? Does that mean Reddy lived at the house?
No, I think she probably, as a lot of her animals in the early years came through Ivan Sanderson and his network of people that he knew. And there were a lot of different groups, and probably somebody housebroke a fox somewhere along the line, just as they housebroke the black pig that used to live at the zoo, if you'll remember. And then after that's over with, somehow they'd end up at Millbrook. They always came with something wrong with them. Not that this was a great idea, but then she had to go back to pooping outside. But she lived for a long time. She'd be a little ornery, but she also would fall in love with certain people and get along very well with them. And I think she lived to be a ripe old age. I don't know if they kept track how long foxes live in captivity, but she certainly had to be right up there.
So this is Ginger, yeah?
Yep.
Ginger, one of your dad's favorites.
Yep. I have to kind of chuckle that in all these films, Dad always liked an action shot. We did not roughhouse that much with all these animals, believe me. But he thought a nice action shot was a good idea. So we do a little bit more than normal. But mostly they lived a pretty quiet life. Somewhere there's a deer in the background. We used to get deer in the springtime when the farmers would mow, and they'd get injured and we'd get the baby deer. These are Barbados sheep that actually were from direct descendants of some of the original sheep. And although now people can get Barbados quite easily, these were pretty special in their day. This is Zipper. She came from some friends of Ivan and Ivan Sanderson's, and she also had been taken very well and taken care of. She loved green beans. That had to be in her diet every day. That was one of the requirements of her coming to the zoo. I don't know who this is, Jono. I don't remember it in particular. It looks like it's an older shot. The only one I ever knew lived in a box, and I used to feed the zoo during vacations. I never saw the animal. I'd bring the food every day, and I never saw it.
So I don't know how this worked. Your mom told me this animal did tricks. So if it never
That's-
came out of the box, that's interesting.
No, it's got to be one of the early ones. Probably late 30s, early 40s, long before I was along. Yeah, he does tricks there. And these were wonderful little skunks.
I think this is Archie McClay.
Yeah. We really enjoyed having the skunks. A baby skunk, there's nothing cuter and more fun. As I said before, I thought they were all going to live with me the rest of my life.
And they were not deskunked, right?
No, they weren't. Mainly you just don't want to scare them. But they're a lot of fun, and to watch them grow is exciting. No, I wouldn't say that. I recently had one move in underneath my B&B. Before the guests came, we had to figure out how to get it out of there. And there's a little one. And we always had baby everythings in the kitchen. Robins and raccoons and woodchucks. There might be multiple groups of each. Yep.
So this you think maybe is a wild skunk?
I don't know. It would be running off, and knowing Dad, you never know quite how he staged them. Looks awfully well fed to be a wild one.
Now this picture of this kangaroo rat, this must have been more amusing to your father than your mother.
Well, I thought, by looking at the leaves there, I figured it probably was in their garden or something. It certainly caught his attention. Probably lost all his beans or something.
Again, your mom told me that this animal ate all the roots of the plants in the greenhouse.
Well, then that's where they found it. Probably didn't disturb it too much either. Dad was always impressed how industrious they were. Yep, certainly not too scared either. Now here's a good example of baby animals to feed. This is a really early shot, probably from the late 30s, early 40s. And they would probably live in that little basket most of the night. We didn't have a lot of cages. It's just kind of what was around the house. And squirrels were always fun. We had a succession of flying squirrels for a while, but they would always get a little older and start nailing you. And that's our dog again.
So this, I think, is one of those little guys grown up. And I know you had a squirrel at one point named Singer,
Yeah.
who was named for the designs he would make on your arm.
He probably just got turned loose and lived at the zoo and created some havoc. This is Woodchucks, an annual spring event. And this looks like one Dad probably had of his own. I'm not sure. Maybe one of the original ones he brought with him. Seems too interested in Dad to be just a quick zoo pickup. Looks like he's done that quite a bit with a Ritz cracker. That's a handy food item. And this definitely is taken over at the little yellow house over towards Smithfield that they lived at. There we go.
That, I think, is Henry Milford, class of 42.
Is it really? Yeah.
That's one animal we have never had since I've been here. We've never had a tame woodchuck.
They can be pretty ornery. You have to get them at the right stage. Here's the animal that stole my mother's heart. This was a little baby porcupine she raised, and there was never an animal that she raised in all those years that one was the most special. Wait till you see its little face. There. Is that a face to die for? I don't think this is the same animal. I think Daddy just kind of flipped him here. We had a whole lot of them anyway. This one seems... They get grumpier as they get older, like the rest of us.
That, I think, was Hank Milford again.
His mom lived in Amenia and worked there, and he was a day student. Went on to be a doctor and helped out on a lot of medical stuff at the zoo, trying to figure out nutrition. It was hard. We didn't have the feeds then. We used evaporated milk and horrible things and whole milk and dissolved vitamin pills and tried to get some extra calcium in there, but it was tricky sometimes. You know you didn't hit it right.
We, of course, have the benefit of years of research, nutritional research now.
Now these are the capybaras, and I don't know if they were there when you were there.
Never had capybaras here.
They're basically a large guinea pig. And they were wonderful. We had fun with them for years, probably at least 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And they kept growing and growing and growing, and they were a lot of fun, and we'd walk them around. They'd clank around with those little feet. What do you think?
This looks like a little winter recreational activity.
I'm not quite sure whether they
harassing the animals.
I'm also thinking that maybe it was wintertime and they wanted to get them out there, but the next shot doesn't look like winter, although everybody has heavy coats on. They were, I'm not sure if this is one of Dad's photography tricks or what, but they were trying to pick up Napoleon and Josephine.
Now we've moved on to a muskrat house.
Yeah, that's no beaver hut. Because Napoleon and Josephine used to be loaned out to people to make dams. Well, the problem was they made the dam in the wrong place. Now, I don't know if this is over at Tamarack with Jesse and Jesse Bonnecue or if this is at Stillman's, but see what they did? They flooded the road.
Yeah, I think that's Stillman's.
Yep. And that guy in the little red shirt might be one of the young Bonnecue men. That's my brother Doan. There's my mother. Probably a Trevor car. If it ran.
Now again, your mother told me that on this particular loan they put 2 beavers out and got 5 beavers back.
Yep.
They had 3 young.
Yep,
They
there
were
they are.
residents at Stillman's.
Now Napoleon and Josephine, you can see they had a little Weight Watchers problem. Those little kids were just as fat as they could be, and they'd never been handled before. And there's our dog Goldie, and we were all brought that day to do a little photo session with them.
So now you're on the left there, and in the middle is...
Mike, my middle brother, and Doan, my oldest brother. And those... Josephine went on the Gary Moore show, tromped on a piano one day and got in trouble, but beyond that, Dad used to take animals, and there was the pair of them, and they were loaned out over, and I think they went to the Sharp Reservation is the last place they ended up, and I think that's the last we heard of them. But again, they used that wonderful strong pen because they couldn't get out of it. I do know that one year they decided to build an indoor beaver pen, which was a cement monstrosity that you'd put water in. The only problem was Dad said a beaver's life ambition is to stop any leaks, so they would cram the stays dry down the drain and clog it up. So then it would become a murky mess. And they can have a little odor to them. Oops, why don't you help it in, Gail? There's the old zoo fence. Okay. Mom was good with multiple shots. Now we'll get the beaver in the pen. Here we go. And shut the gate always. This is Hubert Will. He escaped from Hungary with his Vizsla dogs. He was not able to bring his animals out with him, so he immediately started collecting them again. And he and Daddy struck it up. And the animals were allowed to stay at Millbrook School. And he worked with a local vet named Dr. Lukens. And he worked for him for quite a few years. Then he went on to Hollywood.
And he actually lived over at Dr. Lucan's place?
Yes, yeah. He helped assist him for about 5 or 6 years. But in the meantime, he collected the lion and the leopard and the mountain lion and falcons and macaws of all different kinds and trained them all. And you can see he had the dog and the leopard spend a lot of time together. So they were best of friends. Now this is the early stages of training. Not everything goes the way you want. Sometimes the stepladder falls over too. I'm not quite sure how all this goes over with the public now. Whee!
That's really remarkable.
She used to be in my bedroom. She was actually a very nice cat.
Well, of course, we draw the line at bobcats now. No
Yeah.
big cats.
Well, I think they have a special place, and it's in a few places. I think this was just a kind of a special circumstance with somebody who undoubtedly was going to collect animals and train them. This is down towards our house.
So I guess his real love was falconry?
Yes, he was. I think that's what he was the best at, was training falcons. They would zoom that whole field down by down by your house. What used to be your house. And they'd circle for quite a while, and then he'd call them back in, and they were really good.
This is a peregrine falcon, yeah?
Mm-hmm. There were quite a few different trainers that came across, and animal people that came with him when they escaped. Some good, some not so good. Here's one of his Sapphire, that was her name. I just thought of it. This is the beginning stages of how to stand on your head. Takes a while. Do you have many monkeys like this anymore?
We do no solitary monkeys, and there
Mm.
were a number of them when I came to work here.
Yeah.
Most of them just get too neurotic.
That was our problem. I remember one time, the only animals I used to get bit by systematically was the capuchin monkeys, so I do not have a great love for them. Now, what pen is this of yours now?
This is... you don't know where we are.
That's up in the corner where I think like the alpacas are and stuff. This is an
Or maybe
oodad.
up where the Sika deer are.
Yeah, where the Sika deer
Yeah,
were.
Up in the...
This
up in
is
the
an
corner.
oodad, and that's my baby donkey. But he, at one point, caused a lot of havoc. I used to be able to take him to ball games and make him hee-haw on command, which the Millbrook Mustangs did not appreciate.
So here we are with a screech owl.
We used to have a variety of those over the years that would live on the antlers of the stuffed heads that Dad had of different deer or something in his study. And this, I think, is the golden eagle, isn't it?
No, I think this is Sister.
Is
This
this
is a
Sister?
red tail, yeah.
Well, then that's Sister.
Who I think set a longevity record at 25. We've now
Yeah.
got a hawk in the zoo at 29.
This is
There's
Squeaky.
or just
Yep.
the tail.
Just the tail. That's all that could come out of that cage. Squeaky came from Ivan Sanderson, and Squeaky had hurt some people, and Ivan didn't want to put him down, and so he came to live with us for I don't know how long, as long as I lived there, I think. And Dad thought it'd be cute to get pictures of him. He liked to pull in food with his tail, and he was the only cage that was padlocked.
You look like you're in your regular work clothes there.
Yeah, Dad thought it'd be colorful to have my ballet outfit for the day. Just be known that that monkey had cold banana fingers, smearing them all over you.
Now, Squeaky was the only animal in the zoo that ever had a padlock on his
Right.
cage?
Right. My father had been attacked by a squirrel monkey when he was in the Boy Scouts, and he had a scar to prove it, and he knew what they could do.
And what do we have here?
Is that a potto?
That sounds right.
No. They don't move much. It's amazing they got him to move around that much that day. This is the farm safety shot. My father, it's the only time I really heard him laugh. He thought that was just terrific. I went and got a cement block, put it on top of a metal. And that's Margie Howard being brave enough to hold on to that. Okay. Guess that was the donkey pen the donkey got out of. My husband saw the shot and said, no wonder I married you.
I don't think this is OSHA approved.
No. Who's this, Jono?
That looks like Ray Anelia, maybe.
I bet you made him dig it down below the frost line, too.
Who's a class behind me? There's Mike Thompson, my classmate. So now we're back probably in 64 or something like that.
Yeah. Must be something busted somewhere, huh?
I think Noel Rowe was in this shot somewhere. So that's that whole area behind the zoo.
Yeah, that's all filled in now, huh? You probably know more about the owls.
I got to a great horned owl here. And I don't know how he did these shots.
Yeah, we're wondering whether the owl was out for the day.
If it was, it certainly was tame and happy to stick around.
Yeah, probably came back.
Now we're on to an African eagle owl. And we've also gone back in time.
I like this one.
Now we have a hypnotized African eagle owl. And you can see this is a pretty reasonable bird. He's got no glove on. Beautiful bird. And a family of barn owls.
See no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. I'm wondering if where they're gotten from. I know we used to get our screech owls every now and then from Jesse Bonacue's barns. He'd find them when he's moving the hay around.
These guys must be siblings.
And this was the period of the macaws. We think this is Greg's shower. Certainly a beautiful bird. Who's arguing with who?
And I don't know what the bird is there.
I don't either. Yep, this is more of the springtime nursery in the Trevor kitchen. This is not the same 3 raccoons as before. This is another batch. And we used to get all the deer because of the mowing accidents, but this one had all its legs.
So how old are you here, probably?
Probably about 11 or 12 there. That's in our kitchen. I remember one day, sitting in the kitchen and there were things all over the kitchen. I had to kind of chuckle, wondering how Mom was going to cook supper that night. We had birds warming up. We had things chattering to be fed. Thank heavens for Coke bottles. They didn't break. Look at them. It's for the deer, guys, not you. And this is one of Hubert Will's mountain lions. I thought for sure I'd get this thing to sit up, but this animal never had any respect for me. we'd just do this endlessly, and he'd never sit up. In come Dad, and guess what? It sits up. What we don't do with a ram
So we're back into those clips of the Barbados, yeah?
Yep. Yep, this is the ram. Now this, I can't tell if this is the crosses or not, or if these are the purebreds. There was a little mistake at the zoo one year when either something got through somewhere or we didn't remember. But there was a mouflon sheep, which we forgot was in the sheep department, and sheep that are in the sheep department got together and produced a new family. Now we had a lot of trouble getting the Barbados to live. The young lambs, we had absolutely no trouble getting the Barbados crosses to live. They lived forever. You inherited them, didn't you?
I did. And finally I had to find a home for them. They went on and on.
They just hybrid vigor, I guess.
Again, we've gone back in time now. I'm not sure I really want monkey's hands in my mouth.
Especially after cold bananas. Ish. It wasn't like they were brand new bananas either. Now this is Caesar.
So what year are we in now?
Oh, we're back in the mid-50s again. He came by way of Ivan Sanderson too, and he spent a lot of time at our house, and he spent a lot of time at the zoo. And what we mainly wanted to do was exercise him. That was to make, pardon him, her, very happy, trying to keep her exercised. And so we would play a lot of soccer with her. One day she decided while sitting, she'd sit in our living room a lot of the time, and she just decided she was going to jump up on my mother's china shelf. My mother didn't own one piece of china that was left in one piece over the years. And she used to run upstairs and collapse any lampshade she could find on the second floor.
Now, your dad was a strong guy. You can see how strong that animal is as it snaps him around in the end of that leash.
Yeah, now it's probably, we used to actually, on the way back to the zoo, is Dad would get in the front, drive, and someone would sit in the back and hold on, and Dad would say, okay, here we go. And we'd start the car, and we'd start out slow, and then we'd go a little faster, and a little faster, and a little faster. And I think we got up to about 35 miles an hour. And the kids kept yelling, let's do 80. I hear they can do 80. But we never did that. But that could wear her out a little bit. I think she used to go to some football games, but then I think that got banished away too. I can't remember exactly how long she stayed, but she went to a 12-year-old girl in Vermont. I'm not sure why our house cat was in that shot. Because my mom brushing her, we used to brush her a lot. She liked that. Get the spots all going one way. This is how we really exercised her.
So this is up in the old zoo.
The old zoo with my brother Don, who's probably about 12 or 13 there. And she'd bounce off the aquariums. It was probably nifty for them. Bounce off the back beam there and come around. You can see how well she got exercise that day. She's out of breath a little bit.
And how long was she part of the zoo?
I can't remember. I'm thinking maybe only about 3 years, but then she went to Vermont. A lot of animals didn't get to stay all that long. It's once they were better or whatever happened. Dad seemed to find places that they had to go to, and because we always had an influx coming in, we had to move some out. And back then, the economy was a problem. I mean, he had to keep his expenses down, and cats would be an expensive thing to feed. When Tom Lovejoy went to Egypt for a year, he decided he would loan the Trevors his car. So one night, on date night, my I told my father we have to drive my little boyfriend home to Millerton. Well, that's not a short ride. So my father thought it'd be cool. He said, sure, I'd be glad to. So he put the boyfriend in the back seat, put the leopard in the back seat, put me in the front seat, and off we went to Millerton. Which fine until the leopard pooped partway to Millerton. Didn't get another date.